Hello, welcome, workers and friends. Hola, bienvenido a la clase trabajadora, revoltando. Gracias, mi gente. Welcome to Working Class Revolt. I'm your host, Dust James, the Marxist Leninist truck driver, coming to you live from my humble home in rural North Carolina. And as always, I'm here with my great co host, um, labor organizer, union organizer from down under, Brother David Fox. How's it going?
Very good. Yourself?
Doing all right, man. I had a good day today. Took my son up to the Science Museum in Raleigh, saw the dinosaurs and stuff. Man, he's almost 3. Loved it, man. It's been a good day. Good friends here. Shout out to, we already got people joining us. Shout out to Parasocialite. NATO is absolutely destroying Europe. Isla X, Bienvenido la programa, and Proletarian Clips. Right on, right on. So also our third permanent co-host from Scotland in the United Kingdom, Comrade William Morrison. How's it going?
I'm doing okay. I'm not in my usual location of recording, which is in my home in Dundee, Scotland. I'm on the west coast of Scotland right now, in a little village. I was meeting up with some comrades from the CPGBML and the Workers' Party of Britain. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been a long day. Got up at about 6 o'clock in the morning and took a bus to Glasgow, and then from Glasgow I got picked up by some CP comrades, and we've drove to the west coast. So we're here now. It's been a long day, and it's 20 past 12 at night here. So yeah, but I'm dedicated to my work, so here I am.
Thank you for joining us at such a late hour. So we're very honored to have a guest, a fellow comrade from Switzerland, Brother Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. I've been
Right on.
actually following all of your works, more or less, except yours, David. I don't really know what's going on in Australia, except that there are kangaroos and a lot of desert. Yeah.
Right on. So, Comrade Jason, this is your first time on the program. We're going to
hmm
interview you more in depth, but maybe you
hmm
could just briefly say, um, a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, party affiliation, and so on.
hmm Sure. I'm from Switzerland, Zurich. I used to be a member of the former Communist Party of Switzerland, which then dissolved and reformatted itself in a Labour part in a Party of Labour, not Labour Party, in the Party of Labour. And eventually I left it because I was fed up with the way things were organized, the way they presented themselves, how they focused more on identity politics and less on workers' rights. And so I decided to found something new and founded BKP, which means more or less a workers' and family business party.
Thank you. Sounds like you're in the right place. We were just talking about this earlier. You know how conservatives always like to claim how they're about the family. You know,
hmm
but they're the ones destroying our community. The conservatives push race to the bottom, neoliberal politics that gut our education programs, that gut our highway systems, that lower our pensions, lower our wages, that force people to migrate across borders and across the country, separating families. I mean, it's really socialists that support the family, and I really like that name, and I'm really glad to have you with us. All right, so we're going to get right in. This is a work meeting. We transition between work and study meetings. During the work meetings, we start with labor and news updates. Then we will interview our guest, and we will end with a short workshop. This should go from about an hour and a half, 2 hours max. So go ahead and settle in. Thank you so much for being here. Please share this out on Facebook. Share this out on Twitter. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell them all to come come on up here and learn more about socialism. We got good comrades from around the world, and we're going to get into, the state of the proletariat, as they say. So we're going to start with labor updates. Let's start with our union organizer, Brother David Fox. Maybe you can give us a brief update on the conditions in Australia.
Well, as everyone well aware now, we had our federal election last weekend, and obviously the Morrison government was defeated, and rightfully so as well. I think a lot of people just had enough of Scott Morrison and his antics and also by the respective ministers, etc. Now, the Labor Party has formed government, but they're still one seat short of able to govern in their own right at the moment. It will be interesting to see from now on how much they will keep to their promises. I'm not going to hold my hopes up too high, obviously, and I think, look, out of experiences in the past, the Australian Labor Party here, they have been a party of neoliberal policies for for a very long time. They introduced a lot of policies that were detrimental to working class interests. There was a big growing support for a lot of independents. They're mainly in very middle class, well-to-do seats as well. They're called the teal votes. Obviously, they had enough of Liberal Party policies as well. And in fact, there's big things for them as, like, for example, climate change, a federal independent commission against corruption. But what was interesting, though, both major parties, their votes actually fell. They bled a lot of votes right across nationally, and that comes to show that there is a lot of it's a disillusionment, you could put it, but a lot of anger as well amongst working class people. And I think basically what we have to do here in Australia now, and I was speaking to a union secretary the other day, we do need to agitate outside Parliament and get things organised, because the failure in the past was we were too much relying on lobbying politicians to get what we want, and we hadn't really mobilised at all. And we can't afford now to make that same mistake again. That happened back in 2007 with the landslide election of the Kevin Rudd Labor government. So that's it's something of vital interest for us. We'll wait to be seen. The new Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, obviously, I think it was in Japan. They had their Quad meeting with Japan, South Korea, and other nations in the Pacific as well. I think it was already pre-booked anyway. Went along, but long story short, big issue is for them again, China. And their big announcements was, we've got to make sure we've got more presence in the Pacific, and they come out with all their wisdom to throw money here, throw money there at that nation, and promise them the world. So they're trying to keep up their relevance in the Pacific, and basically, still continue on what's been happening towards China.
Thank you, Comrade Fox. I've been following the election in Australia slightly. I saw your appearance with Caleb Maupin, and from my understanding, I've been doing this for a while. The Liberal Party it's called the Liberal Party, is actually the Conservative Party, and the Labor Party is more like the Liberals, more like the Democrats. And I think that's interesting. This is an outright anti-imperialist show. We want the workers of Europe, the workers of Australia, the workers of the United States to realize that their economic interest is with the rising tide coming from Eurasia, coming from China, coming from the socialist countries. It's not with the dying, decaying empire that's destroying us, attacking the oppressed nations abroad, and attacking working class and oppressed communities here at home. So, I mean, this is a little interesting. I think the Labor Party tries to come off like it's a little more cool-headed. But, I mean, if we look at Obama and we look at the transition from Bush to Obama, I mean, Bush escalated the war more than ever before. 9/11 happened, and they were ready to go in. They invaded Afghanistan. They invaded Iraq.
Yep.
Tony Blair went along with it, and so. If you could just briefly say, do you think that the Labour Party in Australia is legitimately less hostile towards China, or they're just more effectively hostile towards China?
I think the latter is a little bit more appropriate. It'll be wait to be seen. And for those viewers that don't understand about the Labor Party here, I think what makes them a little rather different. It was founded by the trade unions out of the struggles of the 1890s, out of the massive strikes then. And so it had that connection there to the working class for a very long time. So it's an historical thing as well. It wasn't founded similar like the Democrats was in the US by the plantation owners. It was actually this was actually formed out of a party, a necessity to actually have political representation. However, I mean, it's similar to its British counterparts. I mean, probably maybe not as bad. I don't know yet. We'll have to be wait and be seen. It's morphed into something completely different because every time we know it's formed government, it hasn't come to, it hasn't really given what we really been fighting for. We've always had to fight for what we want outside of Parliament. So, yeah, but towards China, was wait to be seen. I mean, but I think actually your latter statement there was pretty much on the mark there.
Thank you, Brother Fox. Let's head over to the United Kingdom. Brother William, can you give us a short update on conditions in your community and Scotland and the United Kingdom?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I want to say is that we had recent council elections, not as important as the Australian federal elections, but we had council elections, which are like the smallest scale kind of democratic elections we have. We have different councils. There's over 1,000 councils in the UK where we vote for. Well, we're different local communities vote for their councillors. We have that in between each general election term. General elections are like the federal elections here, the general election of the UK. So an interesting result was that nationalist parties seemed to win majorities in all countries that were in England. The SNP, as per usual in Scotland, the SNP, the Scottish National Party, which is the separatist party of Scotland, which has ruled over Scotland for the past 20 years, I'd say. They, as predicted, won. They have an absolute stronghold in Scotland. Wales, Plaid Cymru. Plaid Cymru is a Welsh nationalist party that supports Welsh independence from the United Kingdom. They also did significantly well in the council elections. And in Ireland, Sinn Féin, the Irish Nationalist Party, Sinn Féin's actually the political wing of the IRA back in the days of the Troubles. And not so much now, I'd say, but they certainly have moderated over time. But obviously, they still are officially the political wing of the IRA. And so Sinn Féin won for the first time in a very long time, actually. In council elections and general elections, it's usually been the unionist parties in Northern Ireland that win the election. So this is an actual breakthrough for the Irish people as Sinn Féin won the council elections. So that's an interesting kind of overview about the council election results. Nationalist parties are seeming to do better. I'm not sure why that is. I guess just material conditions are just very bad. Working class people all over the UK are very angry and very frustrated, and I guess they're putting their anger towards the wrong thing. I'd urge people not to use their anger against different people from different regions of the UK. I don't think there's any benefit of English or Scottish workers hating English workers and so on and so on. I don't think that's a very progressive and very useful tactic. But there is a reason, there's an explanation for why this happened, obviously, that there's material conditions in the UK have been decreasing and decreasing over time. You know, we've had a lockdown, we've had 20 years of Conservative government. We haven't had a Labour government in about 20 years. We've had gross austerity. We've had mass privatizations of nationalized industries like the NHS. Parts of the NHS are now being privatized, and people are angry. The housing schemes, social housing, is an absolute abomination. Housing conditions are awful. There are people in Edinburgh, the capital city of Scotland. There are people living in flats, in council flats in Edinburgh with black walls filled with damp and mold. This is illegal. This is violates the standards of housing here, and yet nothing's getting done about it. So people are rightfully angry. I just think they're aiming the anger at the wrong people. That's the first thing I'd say, just the results of the council elections. Secondly, there's 2 strikes happening right now in the UK. One strike is the teachers. The teachers for public schools are going on strike. The union is called the EIS. Don't ask me what it stands for. It came out of my head there for a second. But it's a trade union movement that represents teachers, and they have been on strike the past few weeks to protest against the introduction of faculties in the British education system. Faculties is an American thing, so maybe Dust knows a little bit more about the idea of faculties. But in this country, in Britain, the education system is, there's one, in elementary schools, or high schools as we'd call them, or secondary schools, there's one principal teacher of each subject. So politics has a principal teacher. Modern studies has a principal teacher. History has a principal teacher. Music, science, chemistry, biology, physics, they're all separate subjects, and they all have one principal teacher. The faculty system that is being talked about being introduced in the education system would forge subjects together, meaning one faculty member would be in charge of multiple subjects. So there'd be no longer a politics subject or a modern studies subject. There'd be a humanities subject or a social subjects subject. One faculty, one person would be in charge of 3 or 4 previously separate subjects. And so teachers have been on strike. They don't want this introduced in our schools. They don't want that kind of policy here. The policy works here in Britain. Compared to the rest of Europe, the British education system is comparatively quite well. We are doing pretty well. Our education system isn't as bad as other European nations. So we definitely don't want the introduction of the faculty system. We want one principal teacher to be in charge of one separate subject. That's a lot more stable, it's a lot more sustainable, it's a lot more consistent, and it's better for students. We don't want faculties. It's unsustainable, it's dictatorial, and it's just bureaucratic for no reason. So teachers have been on strike to protest against that. And the second strike that's happening, and the last thing I'm going to talk about, is the railway strike. The union RMT, which is one of the biggest trade unions in Britain, has 80,000 members. 80,000 people, workers, are members of the RMT. And yeah, they have voted. 90% of the union members have voted in favour of strike action, meaning in the next couple of weeks, starting next week, so the first couple of weeks of June, there will be mass strikes on our railways. Yeah, this will be disruptive. It might affect travel. Scotland is quite a small country, meaning, well, Scotland is quite a small region, meaning that people travel a lot using trains and buses. That's how we get to cities. We don't really use cars and stuff. The public transport is quite good in this country. So we have trains and we have buses. But the RMT have voted in favour of strike action. And their demands are pretty simple, pretty common sense. They want an increase in wages because over lockdown, lots of people were actually paid off, and the timetables of the buses of the train system changed, and lots of people were paid off and sacked. So they want improved wages, which is a fair thing, since wages have not increased in the rail industry for the past 5 years. There hasn't been a wage increase at all. It's been just stagnant wages. And they want safety of job. They want job safety. You know, hundreds of people have been sacked and paid off in the railway system in this country, and I don't think people understand how important the railway system is in Scotland. It connects people to different cities. Dundee to Scotland, Dundee to Glasgow, Glasgow to Edinburgh, Edinburgh to Aberdeen. Trains are what connects Scottish people together. Without that, we have absolutely nothing. We are isolated cities. It's one of the most important transport systems we have, and it's public. It's under public ownership. It's publicly owned. That is something we were very proud of Britain. Britain is proud to have ScotRail, which is a public transportation system. So yeah, we have threatened strike action, and over the next couple of weeks, RMT union members will be going on strike to fight for better, improved conditions. So those are the three things that I've talked about. So there you go.
Thank you. A lot going on. That's very positive.
Solidarity,
Let's
brother.
see. Right on, Brother Fox. Maybe I'll have a brief update from the United States, and then we'll get an update from Switzerland. Maybe I can just respond and let people know, the situation here. Less than 13% of workers are unionized. We've had some positive movements from trying to organize the Amazon workers, one of the biggest monopolies, but even they're hitting roadblocks. They were able to, even the one union, New York, was able to agree to a union, but then now they're trying to stop that from happening, and they actually shut down the folks in the Black Belt South down there in Alabama. They actually successfully prevented them. I think they're still trying to go forward with it. So we are seeing a transition from the more trade unionism to industrial style unionism with warehouse workers and others, especially within big monopolies like Amazon. As far as the material conditions, gasoline is near $5 a gallon. I know that's not a lot for Europe, but that's huge here. Gasoline was only $2 less than a year ago. It has gone up from $2 to $5 in less than a year. And for people that are in rural areas like myself, who travel 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour or more to work every day, that is a huge part of our income is now coming out for transportation to work. We do not have public transportation systems in rural areas. And the public transportation we do have in the city is dilapidated, falling apart. Just go up in New York City, and a lot of it's unsafe. There's been violence in what little public transportation that we have. So, and it was a big car culture from LA to a lot of these big cities barely have any transit. Inflation is continuing to rise. We're all getting wage decreases. Essentially, there is a credit crisis. People are in more debt than ever before. There is a housing crisis. There is a housing market bubble. Housing prices have gone up rapidly within the last year or so, and it's untenable, and it's forcing people out of the ability to buy homes. And right now, credit's hard to get, but when the bubble does burst, people are going to lose the value they put in their homes, and they're basically going to stop lending money, which will make it even harder for people to get homes. So we have a housing situation. It's not looking good. We recently had a primary. A primary is, you choose the United States primary. The way it works is there's two main parties, Democrats and Republicans, and we choose who will be the nominee for that party. And we've had some interesting with this worsening conditions. We're seeing more Trump type Republicans, and we're also seeing more Bernie Sanders and progressive types in the Democratic Party. A very notable one is Geoff Young, won the Democratic nomination in Kentucky for the House of Representatives. And he openly came out with a abolish the CIA, get out of the war in Ukraine. Very progressive, anti-imperialist candidate in the great state of Kentucky. Won the Democratic Party. I don't know if he's in a county where he even has the ability to win. A lot of these places are gerrymandered. I'm not sure how. I'm hoping he wins that election, but it's very positive to see that upsurge. We were actually going to go to Brother Jason. It looks like his device is no longer connected.
Jason, you still there?
I think he glitched out.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to remove him and add him. No, I can't ban him.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Let me add him back.
I'm
Okay.
having I think it's stopped now. I'll rejoin quick. Is that okay? I don't know what's
Yeah, that's
going
fine. That's fine. Go
Strange
ahead. So
crashing.
excuse us
Be right back.
with the technical difficulty. I'm gonna go through and look through the comments while we're waiting for him to come back. Thank you, Comrade Ramiro Sebastian Funes, for joining us. He has a great program, Unmasking Imperialism. I recommend everyone check that out. Shout out to Anthony Penza. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going on in the U.S. Inflation, gasoline, housing, all the way around. We're seeing worse and worse conditions. Danny Knapp. Dust needs an early 80s VW diesel pickup. Yeah, okay. That'd be pretty cool. I got a 2001 Silverado, and it gets about 16 miles per gallon. It's costing me a fortune taking that old V8 to work. Let's see. Ellie Ace Frank 2.0. We need anti-imperialist map simulation. That's cool. I'd like to know more about that. So we're waiting for him to join back with us. I think while we're waiting, I don't want to hold up the program any further. I think we're just going to go into news updates. And then when he rejoins us, we'll get the labor update from Switzerland. And this is a very grave, this is a very solemn subject. In Tejas, Aslan, Texas, near the Mexican border, there was a shooting I believe in an elementary school. And 11 people, students and teachers, lost their lives. And just recently before this, there was a racist shooter in Buffalo who shot people as well soon before that. And the specific situation in Texas was particularly insulting, infuriating, because the police waited outside the school over 40 minutes before entering the school, before defusing the situation. And the parents started showing up, and the parents were trying to go in to save their kids, and the police started tasing the parents. And this is a school in Aslan. Majority of the people in the community were Raza, people of Mexican ancestry, indigenous ancestry. And a lot of these schools, are underfunded. A lot of, the police, our way our society is set up, the police devalues the lives of poor Black and brown people. Now, why they didn't go in, I don't know. I'm not a police officer. But if you compare the situation from shootings like Sandy Hook and majority more affluent, more white communities, I think there was definitely a different response there. Now, how are we supposed to see this? Is communist, is working class socialist and communist? How do we look at the situation of the continuing mass shootings that are becoming almost normal occurrences in the United States. I notice the liberals will jump right to, hey, stop the NRA. We got to have gun control. We got to do gun control now. But they'll make a big scene about it. They'll cry a lot of tears. And they don't even try to get basic gun legislation. I believe we need basic gun legislation. I know that's going to be a lot of anger coming from, a lot of folks on my camp. But I could talk about gun control in the United States. Gun control in the United States is very unevenly done. Basically, poor black and brown people are not allowed to have guns, and more, middle class and more white folks have tons and tons and tons of guns. And there is a racist component of gun culture. This whole idea of, those poor black and brown people are going to come and shoot me in my home, in the suburb. I got to arm myself. There's a lot of, racism within the gun culture itself. And if you look at, the first implementation of gun control in the United States was done by Ronald Reagan, who out in California, who became later, one of the symbols of the right wing, one of the symbols of the NRA. But it was in response to the Black Panthers who went armed into a courthouse. So if you go into the cities where it's mostly non-white people, you're not allowed to have a gun. And then in places like New York City, they actually had a stop and frisks program that violated people's civil liberties, checked random people, mostly black and brown people, and stopped them, put them against the wall, and looked for guns on them. And then they would usually charge them with other offenses to keep the prison industrial complex running. So there's a very unequal, racist gun laws to begin with. I think we need basic, universally enforced gun laws, tracking systems to get this situation under control. But that's not the real issue. And then you have more liberal socialists who say, well, the problem is sexism, racism. And in reality, that is a problem. There is problems with sexism. There's problems with racism. There's problems with toxic masculinity. There's problems with mental health. Our mental health infrastructure is very underfunded. We don't have universal health care in general. The economic situation, neoliberal capitalism, is putting more and more people in desperate situations. The alienation of capitalism. We have lost our larger extended families. We've lost our community and community structures. We're more and more on the internet. And I think what some of the more liberal socialists who focus on social issues like racism and sexism and toxic masculinity, I think, is communist and working class communist and materialist. We have to look at the base and the superstructure. And the problem is the economic base, which is monopoly capitalism, which mass murders, black and brown people, poor black and brown people, around the world, that massacre, that shoots poor black and brown people with the police forces. The devaluing of human life in this culture, where if you do not have health insurance, 60,000 people are allowed to die every year because they do not have access to adequate health care. It really is the economic base. I think these problems, these social problems, that arise under, imperialist monopoly capitalism, these social problems, the social base of our society that devalues human lives and has these problems arise, these problems are being multiplied by this growing neoliberal imperialist capitalism that has completely gutted, all social programs. because, and when you gut these social programs, and let's say you gut art in the schools, and you gut sports in the schools, and you gut you get rid of all public spaces and become hyper individualized. I think this really is the source of this really sick society, and why it eats capitalism, monopoly capitalism, continuing neoliberal capitalism eats us up and turns us into monsters. And we're killing each other. And we're destitute and isolated. And it's a really sad thing. I think if we want to combat it, we're going to have to build communities. We want to fight for better conditions amongst our people. We need to build the connections in our communities, build communities of solidarity. And from that, we can find each other, build communities, get rid of this alienation, lift each other up, find people who are isolated and reach out to them, and kind of be this upsurge against this sick, disgusting, dying system. I said a lot there. Maybe if we could, we have Brother Jason back. Maybe if we could just respond to that short speech I said on the mass shootings in the United States, and then after we finish that discussion, we'll get our labor update from Jason. Comrade Fox, any response on the shooting here in the United States?
A terrible situation. My heart actually does go out to all the people, the victims' families and friends, and co-workers, and that. It's just absolutely terrible. I'm speechless and nearly don't want to say about that. Look, gun ownership here in Australia is completely. We've got a different system. We don't have a Second Amendment as such. And I don't want to go way off too topic. I get why there was originally a Second Amendment in the American Constitution, because after the Revolution of 1776, the War of Independence, I mean, obviously the government had to call people to arms straight away, because they were they could have been Britain at that time was still in a it was still in a strengthened position. It was actually a reality that they could have come back in force with a massive navy and reinvaded the 13 colonies, the then fledgling United States. So that was part of the historical contents. But for us in Australia, we don't have that. We've actually got a very regulated, extremely regulated system of gun control here. And for very obvious reasons, and that stemmed out of what happened in Port Arthur in Tasmania back in 1996. There was a massacre there by Martin Bryant, and on a shooting spree. And actually, interesting, a lot of that gun control came out of the Conservative government, the Liberal National Coalition. John Howard was the Prime Minister at the time, and a lot of his and the Deputy Prime Minister, who's also a member of the National Party, part of that coalition, had to face a lot of their constituency in relation to regional and rural areas where there was high gun ownership, but they faced it off. They had to do it. And look, to be honest with you, we haven't had a big spree like that ever again. It's obviously still a very topical and controversial issue at times, but I mean, there were guns there that basically should have been seen on a battlefield, not to go hunting or cutting down feral pests such as wild dogs, feral cats, and foxes and rabbits, and to bigger game like wild boar and all that. It was gobsmacked. I thought, well, why did you need it? It wasn't there for a museum piece or for a display. It was actually there for primary use. So that it certainly is, and it's always been a hot issue. I know there were comrades out there who've got mixed feelings about gun control, about we shouldn't disarm the working class and all that. And I think, look, we've got to be careful about when those comrades. You've got to be a bit careful what to say as well. We don't advocate for violent revolution or advocating for that. We've got to be a little bit smart about those things. And look, in Australia here, for example, I can't just walk out in my yard with even just with a .22 rifle, or walk out in the street with it. I can tell you what, within 5 minutes flat, you'd have tactical response. Have heavily armed police surrounding me very, 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 very quickly. Either drop the weapon or I'm dead. So you could, it's totally different situation for you guys in the United States. And as I said, I really, really feel for you people for that. It's just been ongoing for years and years. And you're absolutely right, Dust. I mean, it's all been lip service. Oh, this is terrible. We need this. We need that. But nothing's been absolutely genuinely done. And the government, it's interesting when people say the government's role to protect the people. All right, well, obviously, both state and your national governments have neglected their duty of care. And even with just that recent one, and with the police and that, I think they're basically they've negated their duty of care to common people as well. So this is it's certainly quite a big subject within itself. But my heart goes out for you. And just before we continue, I was going to suggest maybe I know sometimes what we've done for victims of people who've died and that is hold a minute's silence. Is it possible we just have a minute silence for those people who passed away and for the people who still live on? You're on mute, Dust. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, we can do 5 or 10 seconds if everyone wants to join in a very brief moment of silence for the victims of the shooting in Texas, as well as the other mass shootings across the United States and the world.
Sure thing.
Thank you, comrades. So let's see, Comrade Jason, any response to the ongoing crisis of public shootings in the United States?
Well, I think it's interesting because we have also not so tight gun law in Switzerland. Of course, you can't just obtain a weapon, or well, you can obtain some weapons, but some weapons you can't. Like, for instance, an air rifle or airsoft, or even a normal carabine. I don't know how you pronounce it in English. These things can be obtained, but if we are talking about, big machine guns and such, I think you need a license. But we don't really have any shootings. So I don't really have a solution like for the US, if you're asking me this. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it has to do maybe with the culture, with the Swiss culture. But also I would say, I would think working class people here in Switzerland are probably better off than people in the US, be it education or be it just generally living in houses. We don't actually have such a high poverty rate or homelessness. I mean, we do have some homelessness, but it's minor compared to the US, for instance. Yeah. I think probably if these things would be resolved in the US, I don't know, maybe it would be less likely that there would be mass shootings. But obviously, it's a terrible thing, and I hope it won't happen again, but I guess it will. Yeah.
Thank you, comrade. Very, very good points. A lot of people don't realize that when you have desperate, hungry people, people who are homeless, people that are unemployed, this is used as a battering. This is used as a baton against against those who are employed, to say, if you do not accept these horrible working conditions, then you're going to end up like that, which puts a stress, a psychological stress on the entire working class. Let's see, Comrade William, any response on the crisis of public shootings in the United States?
It's just, it's really disheartening to hear, there's so many happen. There's been a point recently in recent years where there's been one mass shooting every day in the USA, and nothing ever changes. It's always the same talk, like either the Republicans or the Democrats. It's always, oh, our heart goes out to them and our thoughts are with them. That doesn't help anyone. That doesn't help. It's maybe the thought counts, but it doesn't actually help anyone. I don't know. Britain has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. The getting a gun here is almost impossible. We had fairly lenient laws back in the day, in the 1990s and early 2000s. People could potentially get a gun if it was for hunting reasons or for self-defense. The military, for example, were able to keep their weapons after conflict, after their terms in Afghanistan, for example. They were able to bring back weapons. But there was one mass shooting of a school, actually up in Scotland, the Dunblane massacre, the Dunblane school shooting. Dunblane was a primary school. Maybe to an American, I don't really know what the translation of language is there, but it was a primary school. The ages of these students were between 5 years old to 10 years old. It's a primary school. There was a mass shooting there. Dozens of little kids were gunned down in a gym, in a gymnasium within the school. And after that one mass shooting, just one, it only took one, gun laws were banned. Guns were essentially blanket banned in the country. After the Dunblane massacre, which killed dozens of little children, that was it. No guns. The only people in this country that have guns are the police, and only at high ranks. We don't have an armed police force. The armed police in Britain are of the very high levels, like the secret intelligence and stuff like that. And farmers, I guess, farmers are technically allowed to have guns, but it isn't assault rifles or anything like that. It's like dual-barreled shotguns. It's like bolt-action rifles and stuff for shooting pheasants and stuff for their farms. That's kind of it. Gun laws are one of the strictest things in this country compared to other countries. And that all traces back to the Dunblane massacre. So I'm not the right person to ask about gun laws. Personally, I'm a communist. I agree with Marx's quote that any attempt to disarm the working class should not be accepted. I think the working class should have the right to own arms. I personally think that we should have some sort of gun law in this country that allows it. But of course, the ruling class here is different to the ruling class in America. That they would never let British workers have the right to bear arms and to have guns. Never in a million years. They always use the Dunblane massacre as an excuse as to why. But like I said prior, mass shootings happen almost every day in the United States. At one point, one happened on average every day for an entire year. There's nothing I can say that will help the situation, so there's no point in me really doing some sort of statement, but just from a British perspective, we are just absolutely gobsmacked that nothing has changed. There's been hundreds of mass shootings and nothing's changed, and thousands of people have been killed unnecessarily by mentally ill people and racists and anti-immigrants thinkers and anti-Islam thinkers. For example, there was a mass shooting in America just the other week in a Walmart in America where the gunman only targeted people of color. White people were saved. He didn't shoot white people. He was only targeting black people in this Walmart. So I don't know. I'm not an expert on gun control. Maybe make it more difficult for people to get guns. Maybe have stronger background checks. Maybe do a psychological evaluation to make sure somebody isn't completely insane and mentally ill. Ask them about their ask them about their political persuasions. If somebody is racist to the extent where they think that they should gun down black people, then maybe they shouldn't get a gun. It's common sense. I don't know. I'm speaking from a British perspective, but we're not surprised that British communists are not surprised in the slightest that this mass shooting has happened. We won't be surprised at the next one. It's an inherently American thing, mass shootings.
Thank you.
It only seems to happen in America. So,
thank you, Comrade William. This is a very difficult subject. David, did you have a quick remark before we go on?
I'm pretty much more so in line with what William had to say. Obviously, we're seeing this from afar. I mean, obviously, look, I made a little mistake there too, and I should have realised a little bit better and focused on what was primary. And it is the collapsing, the decaying conditions in the US is the primary cause of this as well. And it's something that seriously needs to be addressed, because this is going to be continuing on and on. I'm afraid to say this, and I don't want to see anything like that again. So I think there has to be something done over there. How it's going to happen, I don't know. And it has to be some consistent regulation right across the country. It can't be just like one state does this and the other, and it's all over the place. You need to have that consistency across the board. And that's so at least everyone is singing from the same page, because otherwise it's just going to be ad hoc laws. It's going to be nothing really genuinely done about it. And basically, when you hear politicians go, my hearts go out, and and all that. And actually, really, I think there needs to be some sort of massive public pressure to get something done, because trying to rely on the government over there to do something is just being futile. It needs to be a lot of agitation outside of there to start with things moving, because otherwise it's just going to be continuing on this crazy, insane. I can't really say any more about it. Sorry.
Thank you, Comrade Fox. Maybe if I come up. Did you have something to add, Comrade Jason, before I made a conclusion on that topic?
I wanted to ask, have you looked into when this whole... I mean, I don't think you had that maybe in the 60s, maybe in the 1950s. When exactly?
It was really the 90s with Columbine. Really started with the 90s, has gotten progressively worse since. And it's really intensified after the 2008 economic crisis, and now even more with the 2020 economic crisis.
Then it's really the economic issues.
Culture, I think cultural and economic. I think if I had to say some conclusions on the end of this, 2 points I'd like to bring up is working class communist and anti-imperialist. The liberals refuse to hook the culture of violence not only to the weapons industry that makes massive amounts of money selling weapons here and all over the world, but the military industrial complex and the imperialist system itself. How can we stop the gun cartels from pumping guns in the United States if we continue to pay? The U.S. just passed $40 billion in guns to Ukraine. The U.S. sells guns all over the world. The gun crisis here is only a reflection of the bigger crisis of imperialism and gun production imperialism coming out of the United States. The other issue I think that is key is I think they purposely focus on gun control. The reason why they purposely focus on gun control is to promote the red-blue, rural-urban cultural divide. Rural people love their guns, and they're going to get upset. People are being manipulated to support the Republicans that don't help them on this issue. And then other people who are more progressive, who recognize, hey, we need some basic gun control, are being mobilized underneath the other arm of imperialist capitalism, the Democrats. And I think we need to get back to getting to the workers getting to the workers and bringing out the economic, raising the material question. We need universal health care. We need better education. We need more opportunities for kids. We need more economic opportunities. We need more cultural opportunities. And these are popular demands across the rural urban red blue divide that we can mobilize the people against the monopoly capitalists to fulfill. Let's see. So let's go ahead and go to Jason in Switzerland. Comrade Jason, could you give us a brief labor or economic update on the situation in your country?
I'll try to do it similar as to how William did it. I will start with that we have a public transport called SBB, and it's everywhere except in the eastern part of Switzerland, and it is widely used. Can't really say more about the public transport. We have a Labour Party which is pro-EU. It's liberal, and they are anti-China, anti-Russia, and they aren't critical of US or NATO. So I don't like them. I mean, we agree on some issues, like maybe on family, but on foreign policy, they are anti-Swiss neutrality. They think we should intervene and sanction countries, and I'm not a fan of that. Yeah. Then we have a big union, which is called Unia, and it's basically filled with liberals and Trotskyists and basically everything which calls itself left wing, which we would call lifestyle left. And it sided in the Ukraine NATO conflict with Ukraine and NATO, and they more or less push identity politics and have the worker like as a second topic, like a interesting topic which you can look into, at least from my point of view. Then there's another union, a smaller one. It's called SUNA, or like the group Students and Youth for a New America. I think SUNA was first actually with the name, and it's more of a moderate union, and it doesn't push identity politics that much. And I've recently joined it. I already talked about how I joined the stream of the Workers' Party Britain, where they talked about the history of unions and how to get into that. And really, from there, I've learned how to go into unions, because I don't have any experience in unions, because we are a new party and everything. But I see it as a better alternative to the Unia. The liberals here, they want to tax everything, basically, and they hate family businesses. Yeah. And then we have the biggest party in Switzerland, and that is the SVP, that is the Conservative Party, and they are pro-neutrality, meaning anti-intervention in most cases. They are pro-business. They say they are pro-worker, but I mean, you don't see them in unions. You sometimes they actually come with good arguments. Like, for instance, currently with the petrol prices, they are the only party which is speaking up about the petrol prices, which is, in my opinion, not really a good thing, because that's like the Republicans talking for the workers. And I mean, in the end, they don't actually work for the workers, but they work for the big business owners. So that would be the economic update, I guess.
Thank you, Comrade Jason.
Oh, and hang on, there was another thing. Where do I have that? There is a strike going on of Smooth, and Smooth is basically like a company which delivers the food. So, for instance, you can order food from McDonald's, or you could order the food, I don't know, in America, maybe from Pizza Hut or Burger King, Starbucks, something like that. And they would deliver it to you. And this delivery service is at the moment striking because they need a proper wage, and they need to be treated better. Yeah.
Thank you, Comrade. Smoot, is this another one of those online companies that are being disruptive to more traditional business structures, kind of like Uber, Uber Eats? Is it more of an
I don't know
online
what
company?
Uber Eats is, but I think, yes, Smooth would go in that direction.
Hmm.
I don't think you know what Just Eat is, or do you?
No, I haven't
Ah,
heard, but they're
William already
Uber.
does. Okay.
Uber Eats and DoorDash are companies that's only started a few years ago with the
Mhm.
accessibility of the internet and technology, and basically it pays workers almost nothing, with no benefits, with no insurance, using their own transportation to pick up food from restaurants. And it's been a lot of it's very casualized
Yeah.
labor in
Mhm.
general, and it's driven down wages and gotten rid of regulations.
Yeah. Well, the Smooth workers also want that um, petrol, for instance, which they use for the car driving around, that is being paid, but it's not at the moment. So yeah, it's more kind of like, I guess, an Uber Eats. Yes.
Thank you, comrade. Very good to keep this keep a very international perspective
Hmm.
on this. So we're a little bit over time on news updates. We should really go into the interview. Is there anybody who has a news item they absolutely want to bring up in this last period? I know, Comrade William. I know you prepared a few.
No, I just want to say that just I had two news pieces, but if we're running low on time, I'll just say one. Pretty much, Turkey has went back on its word. At the start, when Sweden and Finland were considering joining NATO, um, Turkey said that they'd veto the decision in support of Russia, blocking them from. So pretty much, the rules of NATO are every single member has to agree for a member to join. And Turkey at the start said that they'd be willing to veto that decision, blocking them from entering. They've now went against that word, and they're now saying that they'd now welcome Sweden and Finland to join NATO, as long as Sweden, in Turkey's eyes, as long as Sweden stops advocating global terrorism. Of course, what they mean by global terrorism is parties and organizations in Turkey, such as the PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party. And pretty much, Turkey's only demand is that Sweden stops supporting the Kurds' struggle for independence. Essentially, if Finland and Sweden agree to do that, Turkey is quite happy to let them join NATO, which is not what they said to begin with. So they went completely against their word. Turkey was the only nation that was willing to veto it. So now that Turkey's went against their word, every single member of NATO are quite happy to let Sweden and Finland officially join NATO. And I think that's a huge problem, and it'll benefit NATO imperialism and fascism, and it'll add even more power to the enemy of Russia and to the enemy of the international working class.
Thank you, comrade. I this kind of goes along with it. I'll just bring up two news stories very quickly. I watched recently the Convo Couch was reporting from the elections in Colombia, and Colombia is basically the NATO of Latin America. They've had a narco government that has basically killed any union organizers for leftists for decades. And there's a chance that they could have a progressive, somewhat more anti-imperialist government come into power. So we're going to be watching that election closely. Also, there was a meeting proposed by the United States. I don't think it's Organization of American States. It's something similar. It's a organization of Latin American countries led by the United States, and they've been trying to leave out Nicaragua and Cuba. And Mexico, which has recently nationalized lithium and refuses to kick out so-called Russian agents in their country, is now refusing to go to this meeting held by the United States unless Cuba and Nicaragua go along with it. So we're seeing very positive movements and directions from the AMLO presidency, as well as another potentially progressive government in Colombia. Let's see. So we're going to go into the interview section. Does anybody else have anything to add to news updates before we go into the interviews? Comrade Jason?
Yeah. As Swiss people, or more as a Swiss person, I am very much not happy with what Sweden and Finland are doing, not just because I think NATO is a bad organization, but also because they're ignoring their history of neutrality, of non-interference, of non-alignment, and I think it's not good. And I think these leftists in these countries should push for keeping the neutrality, because at the moment this seems like the best and most easy option for these countries, or reason to stay out of NATO.
Thank you, Comrade Jason. So we're an hour and 6 minutes in. We're going to get into our interview portion. We already had you give a brief statement. We're very honored and glad to have you with us, Comrade
Likewise.
Jason. We're wondering if you could give us, a brief background on your political journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've started, like I already said, in the Party of Labour originally. Or, well, even before that, I was in anarchistic groups of Anonymous, but I mean, I was still in my teenage years, more or less, then. And then I joined the Party of Labour, and I was there for around 2 years. Learned about anti-imperialism, Marxism, but most of the time I have learned it through books by myself, because there weren't really courses or anything. Eventually I got fed up with the way the organization presented itself, how they pushed more and more identity politics, similar to the Unia or similar to the Labour Party. And they more or less try to appease always the liberal parties, like, oh, we're gonna do this because then we're gonna be supported by them and such. And in the end I just thought we need a new party, a party which tries to reach not just leftist people but actual workers, because I think making a party which just reaches leftists is not really gonna, how do I say, you won't build a mass party like that, I don't think. I think if you want to reach workers and if you really want to help the working class, you need to try to reach the workers, and in my view that is not through identity politics. But that doesn't mean that I automatically hate trans people and such. I just think focusing on workers' rights is at the moment more important. Yeah.
Very powerful. Maybe you could tell us a little bit of your current work some of the projects you've been involved in.
Okay. First of all, we had to, of course, build up the party, which took about maybe 1 to 2 years. First, we were a group, a movement. Eventually, we became a party. We did is tabling a term which you understand?
Yes.
Tabling. Okay, yeah. We were out tabling, handing out our leaflets, gaining membership, gaining also publicity. And then eventually, actually this year, no, actually last year, amid the corona pandemic, we were organizing for small businesses to stay open, which were vital and which were going to go bust, basically. Like dance schools, for instance, we supported a petition, and we tried to find like a middle way for Corona, because we said just doing another lockdown won't solve it. We should have regional lockdowns, similar like China has had, and we would have to have a government which reacts or more responds fast. Not because how do I say, we had like not a lockdown but a shutdown for like 2 years, and it stretched on, and some rules were completely ridiculous and which made no sense. Like on Sundays, I think you weren't allowed to go shopping or something, and it was dumb because like then under the week, of course, more people, or maybe it was Saturday, I don't remember. But then under the week, more people would go shopping, of course, so it would make it worse again. It wouldn't even matter. And then eventually, in 2022, I ran for elections in a conservative part of Switzerland, and we tried to run. We were back then called Proletariat Schweiz, Proletariat Switzerland, and we tried to reach conservative workers. We had leaflets, and we basically leafleted nearly every house in the because we're here in the countryside, um, nearly every village. Yeah, and in the end, I reached 300 something votes out of 900, and we then thought, maybe the name Proletariat Switzerland won't will actually hinder us reaching conservative people. So we decided to change our name to Workers and Family Business Party, because every time when someone asked, "Oh, what is Proletariat Switzerland?" we said we're a Workers and Family Business Party. So why not just call ourselves that? But yeah, but I would say we found ourselves in the traditional thinking of the Swiss thinkers Huldrych Zwingli, Heinrich Pestalozzi, and Leon Nicole, and are as well in the tradition of the classics, I would say. Yeah.
Wow, that's really fascinating. You touched on a number of very biting and important issues. If we look in I actually am very rare among people on the left. I'm a trucker and I supported the Freedom Convoy in
Mhm.
Canada as well as in the United States. Our version of it here as well, and I think a lot of those folks are being manipulated by the right wing to support conservative politicians that may not have our interests. But they were rallied around very important and legitimate grievances, and that is the destruction, the assault on small businesses, including truck drivers, and we've seen that, and we've seen the larger left has been silent on the way COVID was used against the small businesses, and I think that's not that's not a good thing. I think people got to learn communists are not liberals. And we got to understand, yes, COVID was a problem and it had to be dealt with. And but they used it to attack workers. They used it to bail themselves out. They used it to grow the monopolies and destroy the small businesses. And people are having trouble with this. Um, I think I really like the plan you got there. I really like where you're going with this, and I like how you draw on some of the positive history to reach the working class in general and get out of that, you know, here to red, blue, urban Earl or what have you. How do we get to and mass the workers? Maybe a few more thoughts on this concept.
Yes, even the way we present ourselves is like this. This is our party uniform. Normally, oh, there's this noise again. Don't know if that's from me. We do present ourselves like this, and we try to not look scruffy, because we think if we do, people won't take us seriously. And especially even when we're outside on the street, we try to look professional, we try to act professional, because we seem to have success this way. And we think if we just run around with a t-shirt with the party name. I mean, Caleb Morpin has talked about this often. Revolutionaries wear suits, and we agree with that. We think we have to look professional, because if we don't, people won't listen to us. They'll confuse us with liberals or with anarchists or maybe with the Greens, and they won't actually pay attention to what we're saying. This, of course, has put us in a stupid spot, I would say, in some cases, because they confuse us then with Nazis and right wingers and such. Oh no, people walking around with uniforms, that means they must be Nazis. And yeah.
Thank you, Comrade. What's the Comrade Fox? Any further questions or comments for our guest?
Well, actually, a point you picked up there is when you call leafleting working class areas, we call it letterboxing. Very similar thing, and I believe it's actually illegal in the US to do that. So it's a lot harder for them over there. I can't talk for other countries, but what you find? Did you find it's actually it was a really good way to engage with workers? Because when I was letterboxing during the federal election, we were handing out it was like a postcard with a picture of Scott Morrison with the flowers around his head and "Not my job," and then you had a QR code and some information on the back explaining. Basically, look at who supports workers most and all that, and in fact, trying to get them to think about working class interests. Did you find that was a really good way to engage with workers there in Switzerland? They can actually come out and actually talk to you about it, especially the more conservative side of them.
Do you mean the letterboxing?
Yes, yeah, leafleting, and talking to workers there. Did you find that was a lot? It was actually an easier way to engage with them.
I think letterboxing is, of course, easier for the party to do, but it's not very social, because you don't really see the person. I mean, they get your letter, your leaflet, definitely. I don't know. I think both is a good strategy and both is required. That you do a table and you hand out leaflets, and also at the same time you go around and put letters, put the flyers in people's letterboxes. In our case, we did something because we wanted to really agitate like traditional left wingers. We looked at the areas and we looked at the problems there. And for instance, in Berchikon, it was really one bus line which was still missing, or for instance, everywhere green grass is being built over, and there's I wouldn't say, of course, an overpopulation, but like everything is being cramped, and we put that on a leaflet, and we had specific leaflets for that area, and we had leaflets for another area, and that worked until we accidentally ordered too many leaflets for one area and not enough leaflets for another area, where we in the end had to leaflet in Gorsau, which is the main, I don't even know how you say it, like it's a county, but the county has like districts, and in the main district we had to use flyers from another district, which wasn't good, but I mean, it taught us a lesson.
Mm.
And I think because we had our website on it and everything, I think people still understood it.
Mm.
But yeah, there was a lot of things which went wrong during the election. But I mean, it's a conservative part of Switzerland, and running there as a left-wing party, even the Liberals don't run there as a left-wing party because they just don't want to. And we tried it and we had some success. And I'm pretty sure if we maybe did it again, maybe with a different name, maybe if we like, well, with the name which we have now, and maybe done better leafleting, maybe I would have been elected. But also, I wasn't in the news until the election has already started, basically.
Mm.
Yeah. And then
Very good.
a second time, what happened was I was interviewed about the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict, and I stated that we want to be neutral on this. And of course, they more or less said I support Putin, and I got tons of hate mail, and there was a huge shitstorm, and many lifestyle leftists attacked us. So yeah.
Let's
Very
see,
good.
Comrade William, any questions or comments for our guest?
Yeah, I just want to say I was very inspired to hear about your story, about your party and organization. It seems to be doing some effect, even in the more conservative areas, which is very, very difficult to reach as anti-imperialists or as socialists. So yeah, I was very inspired to hear your story. Your organization seems to be doing very well. I think like you said yourself, you're a very new organization. I think if you
Yeah.
just be more patient and keep going, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a fine job, and you're getting a lot of people that some socialists and communists these days don't get support from. So I think you're a very unique case study. So yeah, definitely, I was very inspired to hear it, and I think you've shown very clearly that it's important for communists and socialists to take an anti-liberal, an anti-woke, and anti-identity politics stance. The CPG-BML, the Communist Party in Britain that I'm a member of, takes a very vehement anti-identity politics stance. We don't stand for identity politics. We don't accept it in our ranks, and we're very proud on that position because it is just a bourgeois distraction. It does not serve or directly improve conditions for the working class at all. There's not an ounce of working class analysis in identity politics. So yeah, I just completely show my solidarity to you and your organization, and
Thank you very much.
yeah, I'm very, very supportive of what you're doing. So keep it up, please.
I just wanted to say on your point on conservatives. I don't know, of course, what kind of conservatives you have, but our conservatives, we can actually find common ground on a lot of things, even sometimes on the case of family, on the case of foreign policy, less on domestic policy. But I think we can actually win many conservative thinking people, not necessarily the staunch conservative members of a
Aye.
party, although we do actually have some conservative party members which like our organization. So I think it's more about how do you present something. we present, for instance, the last election, which was about
Yeah, no, I was just, yeah, on you go. Do you finish your statement?
the last election was about if parents should have 18 weeks maternity leave, and we presented it in a way how it not just benefits the workers but also small businesses, because through that parents will become more flexible, will have more time for their children, but also children are a necessity for society, and through that we could win left wingers and conservatives or right wingers or whatever for this specific actually it's not an election, it was a vote, because we have like votes in Switzerland on certain subjects.
William, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just want to say that I completely agree with your thing on the whole conservative question. Lots of liberal leftists, and you can tell that they're kind of libertarian leftists, because they completely stand against kind of working with conservatives or even speaking to them, and they think that it's completely like unscientific to talk to them. But actually, if you actually listen to what conservatives say, most of the time they're saying the most Marxist-Leninist bollocks most of the time. I was at a demonstration just a couple months ago in Britain, which had conservatives in it. And all I said was that British means of production should be owned and regulated by British workers. And the conservatives there nodded their heads in agreement. They were like, hell yeah, we should absolutely do that. That's a thing that we should do. So, yeah, we should absolutely. There's nothing against trying to attract conservatives, and clearly for you in your study in Switzerland, it definitely benefited your organization. So, yeah, I don't have an issue at all with working with conservatives, and I think the British conservatives are very similar to the conservatives you have in Switzerland, where they have certain views on social and cultural issues, but actually politically or philosophically, they're not really conservative in the philosophical sense. They're more just kind of, they have certain views on social and cultural issues. And if we can harness that, and if we can tap into that kind of thought, we can gain a lot of people that we don't usually attract otherwise.
Comrade Fox, did you have a statement or
Well,
question?
it's interesting. I can actually relate to both of you there, because during the federal election, and we're still continuing, and we're running obviously we're having manufacturing coming back into Australia again, because we seriously need it. I won't go into the whole story of it, but we've really deindustrialised over the last 30 years or so. Now, it was interesting. We had all union gear on, but we had all our flyers and information and that. And some people were going, "Oh, about this party, that were you guys barrack from?" And I said, "No, we're manufacturing. We think manufacturing should be back here in Australia. What do you think, Australian manufacturing?" And next thing you know, "Oh yeah, where can I sign? Sign on there. How can we support?" And it just broke across the political divide. It was interesting. Even among workers, first of all, they go, "No, thanks, mate. I'm not going to take that. No, this is about manufacturing for Australia. What do you think?" And then they go, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." And it started. And that way, that was the way I was engaging with a lot of workers as well. Right, it was amazing. The most conservative to the more, and even some on the left as well actually agreed to it. So it broke through that barrier, and I thought, yeah, and that's why I've always remind every comrades out there, we've got to focus on what's primary, what's dear to everyone's heart here, and that along with cost of living measures. I mean, that just broke through, and everyone, that they don't care what you look like or whatever else you identify with or whatever. They don't care. This is the most important issues, our bread and butter. Because at the end of the day, we've got to eat. We've got to have food on the table. We've got to have a roof over their head. We've got to have clothing and other things as well. I mean, so it gets back to that real basic stuff to work from again. And I thought, yeah, we've and it's interesting. You look at the level of politics; it's just gone way off the mark. We need to get focused again. So it was certainly inspirational what you talk about, what's happening in Switzerland there.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting a little bit on with time. We still got to do our workshop. Maybe I could just touch briefly on this idea of class struggle in economics versus identity politics. important to note that gender there's real issues with gender. There's real issues with race. There's real structural economic problems with race, especially in the United States, and I believe in Europe as well. When it comes down to it, the liberals and the liberal parties don't actually care about those issues. All they care about is repainting the imperialist capitalist system as progressive and to keep the people who in power. And if we want to reach the base and reach the community, if we put out an economic program that can go across, the so-called aisle or what have you, we can get the power necessary to combat the imperialists that are holding all people down, including transgender folks and people and comrades of color as well, down from this imperialist system. Maybe I want to get into one more topic since I got you on here. This is the first time we've had a comrade in Europe since the Ukraine conflict has intensified. And I'm hearing a lot of reports that prices of fuel are going up. Maybe standard of living is going down with the economic crisis. I labeled tonight's show NATO is destroying Europe. And on this show, we're an outright anti-imperialist show. You see the Russian flag behind me. I see Russia as an ally against the imperialists, against the same monopolies we're fighting through here. But I mean, I can understand your position coming out as neutral. You guys are on the ground doing politics. You said you were neutral and they attacked you. You know what I'm trying to say? So yeah. I can get where you're coming from, trying to operate in this hard political situation. But maybe you can talk a little bit about how the United States and NATO is throwing Europe underneath the bus economically to fight a war against the Russian people that does not benefit European workers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 1 second. So in Europe, how do I start? I'll start with Switzerland. Switzerland, when you grow up, you watch American movies, you watch SpongeBob, you watch maybe Teletubbies is English, I don't know, but you watch all American films. You constantly hear in our media about American politicians. We heard in our national media about that abortion is being made illegal in some part in America, maybe in Texas, I don't know. And we are constantly being, how do I say, maybe bombarded or affected by this, and maybe like trained to think like Americans and not to think for our country or to be interested in our country, but to be interested in the problems and in the interests, being interested in the interests of America. And so this has gone so far, not just in Switzerland, but also in Germany and basically in whole of Europe, as you can see. And I think for a very long time, it really started with Nord Stream 2. Now this current conflict, of course, where it was all about getting cheaper gas from Russia, because getting it from the United States is not just more expensive, but it's also more damaging to the environment. And the EU wanted to have a deal, or more, Germany wanted to have a deal with Russia. And this deal was, of course, a threat to the United States. And they did all of this propaganda. They talked about the freedom fighter Navalny. Oh, and they did this thing in Belarus with Protasevich, the Azov fighter of Ukraine, or more, which trained there. And they did all these things just really to stop Nord Stream 2. And of course, they are trying to stop this Belt and Road Initiative, and it's all to make Europe dependent on the United States. And this is gonna, so far, Nord Stream 2 is it was basically finished, and now they're unfinishing it. And they even have this slogan in Germany, freeze against Putin, because Germany will have problems, because not just in Switzerland, but in entire Europe, the Greens and the Liberals, they are pushing against radioactive power. They are pushing against coal power. I don't think coal power is good, but they are pushing against all these things and saying, oh, we have to go green, we have to stop climate change, and we're going to have electronic, how do you say, um, uh, energy crisis soon, being not produce enough electricity, and these people don't think further than just you know, the plug, basically, not what's behind the plug, just, oh, the electricity comes from the plug. And yeah, but we can also see it, of course, in the petrol prices. I'm actually speaking about Central Europe, because William Morris is from Europe too, of course. But we can see the gas prices rising. I, as a driver myself, have noticed this, and I'm pissed. I'm really, really pissed, especially that we are joining these sanctions. And I've said many times, I would let the Nord Stream 2 pipeline go under my bed, you know, go through under my bed. And then Switzerland at least would have cheap gas and wouldn't have to buy it from Germany and whatnot. And yeah, against the rising petrol prices is the Conservative Party, and their policy more or less is lowering or even abolishing the tax on petrol. But I've seen in Belgium, the Workers' Party of Belgium, they are talking about price fixing, and I think we will probably be pushing for something like price fixing, and say, oh, 1 liter of petrol shouldn't be higher than I think it was 1.4 euro or something. Yeah. Oh, actually, it was, no, 1.4 euro. And I think that's much better than just saying, oh, we should lower the taxes. And they're also talking about the Workers' Party Belgium talks about how they want to somehow tax the profiteers of the war, the petrol giants, or more petroleum giants. And yeah, I think that's better than just saying we should lower the taxes, because if we lower the taxes, we're actually helping these giants, because most of them are really giants. They're not small family businesses. They're big businesses like BP, like Shell, etc., etc. And I think they should pay. They shouldn't just profit and win from this war. Yeah.
Thank you, Conrad. Very astute analysis. Imperialism, monopoly capitalism. 80% of the world's oil supply goes through like these 5 companies that started this war, that pushed this war, that has been putting those troops in Ukraine to attack Russia, to force them out, try to force them out of the global market. Very inspiring to hear. Anybody else have anything to add on the interview portion before we go to the workshop? Comrade Fox.
It was just interesting. You mentioned about price fixing that for fuel because the recent Morrison government during their federal budget, they decided to take 20 cents out of the fuel excise, which is a tax. It's a major government revenue. But what it was only a temporary reprieve for maybe like at least 3 or 4 weeks. Now we're still seeing prices are still going up. The and the excise was only the excise removal was only temporary. I think it's due to end in around August, September. But obviously, at the end of the day, it just comes to show, look, decreasing taxes isn't going to work. It's a clear example of that, and I think it's a good message to put across to all working class people and other people around the world that lower taxes doesn't mean it's going to keep things cheap, because what they're not dealing with is the profit motive behind it. So what they've in fact done is deliberately inflate further and further and further to increase their profit margin. And just on that, I'm going to put a link to the Workers' Party of Britain, Workers' Party of Belgium in the post here. So if anyone wishes to follow them, feel free to do so.
William, anything to add before we move on?
No, I'm okay.
All right, so we're going to go into our workshop portion. This is where we try to get things, break things down. How do you talk to the common worker? How do you talk to incorrect positions within our circles? I'm really glad to have Comrade Jason on here, who ran for office, has been out there hitting the pavement on the streets, trying to get a constructive scientific socialism out to the people, regardless of who they vote for. So he's right up our alley with this stuff. So we're going to bring it up again. I'm going to be someone in these online circles who maybe they spend a little bit too much time online, and maybe they're trying to build a brand instead of actually build the power necessary. Maybe they spend a little bit too much time fighting with the, as Comrade Jason called them, the lifestyle left, as Center for Political Innovation calls them, the synthetic left. I really like the Blackout Network. They call them the boutique left, which is kind of cool. So I'm just going to pretend to be that for a second. I am not a leftist. I am a communist. Leftist, leftoids, lefties, all these people are degenerates and disgusting, and I want nothing to do with their degenerate, disgusting leftoid lifestyle. I am a communist. I am not a leftist. Let's see, Comrade Fox, how would you respond to somebody who put out that position?
Well, of course, that we actually don't have we haven't got anything in common with those particular groups or group of people that we're referring to. Our what we have common is with the working class, and that's where we have to be entrenched. I also like to know that. Also note the communists are part of what it was an old terminology of the old left or traditional left. Some people would know that was our background. We don't obviously, yes, we don't have any. We don't have much in common with all those other groups. I've just mentioned that for various obvious reasons, because we're about class politics. We're about changing society, the economic system from a capitalist one to a socialist one, and eventually on through to communism. And that's where we need to be focused. I think, look, basically, I think we need to keep focused on what's primary. I always keep insisting on that, on the economic basis and superstructure. It's vitally important, and I think we've, just as we've been talking through the program today, we're starting to make those breakthroughs with workers from all across the political spectrums. That's what makes us different from the others. I'd say, look, we're more of that traditional left. I think we need to keep that background, or the old left, or whatever you want to call it. We do need to retain that, because that's part of our history. If we vacate that field, like I've seen the mistakes many times when we've vacated certain areas, then that leaves the opportunity for the right or I'll use that as a general figure, keep the general terminology just to keep the discussion going, then to fulfil the void. And we can't afford that. We need to retake what is ours in the first place and hold the position, but expand further within the workers. That is our position.
See, Comrade Jason, I really liked our comments before we started this. You said you call it the traditional left versus the lifestyle left.
Yes.
So how would you respond to somebody who says, why are you calling yourselves the traditional left? We're not leftists. Communists rise above the left-right divide. What would be your response to that?
I mean, it's really traditional left, and I think we would have to go back to the French Revolution, where the pro-monarchy people sat on the right side, and the anti-monarchy people stood on the, or more sat on the left side. And from there, really, people think that terminology originated right and left wing. So I would say I'm definitely against the monarchy and would already consider myself left winger. Some go by the definition of giving each person the equal right for every man, more or less. I don't know if I can agree with that definition, but I would definitely say that I am for equal rights. Yeah, but I mean, I think David Fox, your answer was would have been better than mine, probably.
Right, and I really liked your lifestyle left. I think that really gets into the heart of it. How people, anarchists, Trotskyites, people who try to the Radlibs, they kind of come off like they're radical, they're left, but they're communists, but then they back imperialist politicians who are the enemy, who are our enemies. So what are they doing? They're just virtue
role playing.
Go ahead.
They're more or less role playing. They're acting. Oh, I'm Che Guevara. Oh, and then they spew some liberal bullshit, and that is why, again, some liberal bullshit, which is why we have to support the United States, like for instance Walsh.
Very good, very good. So it's interesting. We're kind of coming up with a middle ground here. Like we're definitely against, the Radlibs and the Trotskyites, but I think there's a tendency to become the exact opposite of them, and to engage in another type of cultural war, where you start seeing communism as socially conservative, fighting against the social liberals, instead of what David Fox was talking about. We are the working class. We are trying to mobilize working class people, regardless who they vote for. I mean, there's progressive people who are working class as well. There's socially liberal working class people as well. We want to apply to all of them folks to actually build power to oppose the capitalists. And I think that's the heart of the argument. They're not the synthetic left, but we don't want to become a caricature and the opposite side of the same coin. Let's see, Comrade William, how would you respond to someone who says we should no longer identify as leftists at all?
I would generally agree with that. Yeah, I think leftist is a way too vague concept. We are communists. Lenin made it very clear that we should be honest with the people, and from that analysis, we should class ourselves as communists. We should be honest with the people. We are communists. We have communist principles. Leftist nowadays is a way too vague concept, and I'd completely agree with the statement that Dust said to begin with. Leftist nowadays, directly associates with kind of decadent people who are they show symptoms of late stage capitalism. We are communists. We do not stand for that. Caleb Maupin made it abundantly clear that our real socialists are not snowflakes. We don't get sensitive over things. We don't get offended. We don't cancel each other. We don't block each other. We don't have this toxic culture of slandering comrades. Real communists support each other. We build bridges with people who are different from us. We talk to people who are different from us. These are communist principles. We don't stand for the decadent left, the degenerate left, whatever you want to call it, the synthetic left. We are not them. Real socialists are not snowflakes. We are friends of the working class. We are trying to liberate the working class. We're not left of anything. We are communists. That is enough by itself. So I'm proud to be a communist, but I'll never call myself a leftist.
Thank you. That's you're actually agreeing with the person I'm purposely. This entire workshop is to disagree with that point, not to if you read. I mean, if you listen to some of the stuff that Caleb and others have said, we purposely call them the synthetic left, meaning we're the true leftists. And if you go back to what Comrade Jason said, that's what it is. We are historical progress, carrying historical progress forward. I think we don't have to agree on all issues, but I think there is some problems that come up with this new formation. And I think the problem with getting rid of identifying as a leftist altogether, first of all, you get rid of that historical legacy. If we are leftists, we are the true leftists. We are historical progress. So if we're only communists, how do we identify with George Washington? How do we identify with the American Revolution? They weren't communists, but they were leftists of their time. They were revolutionaries of their time. How do I identify with the French Revolution? So we lose some of our historical legacy when we no longer call ourselves leftists. And another part that is concerning is a lot of the people that are rejecting the term left are actively siding. I think they're actively siding with conservatives instead of forming a true neutral. Like they believe they mischaracterize the masses of the population as conservative, when in reality, the masses themselves are a mixed bag. The masses, some of them are socially liberal, some of them aren't. Some of them are socially conservative, and it's constantly evolving forward. And I think if we're going to be a true center on the social divide, we have to be the true leftists.
Can I just add one last thing?
We don't have to. Go ahead. Comrade Fox, go ahead and add to that, and then we'll have Comrade William respond.
Actually, and there's been some good things. I've actually put some recommended readings in there about that. Comrade Harple Bra, who William knows very well, wrote 2 excellent books about social democracy, The Enemy Within, Trotskyism and Leninism, and explains how that is different ideologies that are incompatible with communism as well. And I think you could explain it. Actually, and also too, Jacqueline, this came out from your party many years ago. I think Harple came up with the Trinity Trotto revisionist leftists. We used to say that a lot as well. So, it's certainly it's somewhat worthwhile reading for viewers. But I think that's what differentiates us. But I think what we come about, what we need to do is reclaim what is ours in the first place. And everything else. But we would certainly don't identify with the synthetic left, the Trinity Trotto revisionist, the compatible left, the bourgeois left, whatever you want to call it. There's so many names, it's not funny now.
Let's go ahead and respond to this before William responds. It kind of adds to it. Proletarian clip, Stalin was socially conservative. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think Stalin was the true middle. So Stalin was from the peasantry and from the proletariat and from an oppressed nation. And he knew the people. So he did not push social issues on the people. He allowed the people as they were, and he had an emphasis on economics, and that economics was left. There is left-wing economics, and left-wing economics is socialism. I mean, there's that is just a social political term that has always been the case, and historically it has been the case. So I'm a little bit concerned of this new trend of redefine. Maybe it is the right to try and define. I don't think so, and I'm having some issues with it. Go ahead, Comrade William, and respond.
Well, first of all, I just also can add to what Dush said. I don't think Stalin was socially conservative. Back then, when he was alive, his actual social views were very, very progressive. Historical context matters. Nowadays, sure, and nowadays he would be classed as socially conservative for the things he believed. But back then, in the 1930s and the 1940s, very, very socially progressive, actually, compared to the society at the time. Secondly, I appreciate the recommended reading, and I'll be happy to read them. But the CPGBML I'm with now, I don't think we'd ever call ourselves leftist. We're famously called the communists in Britain. We're known as the communists, not the leftists or anything like that. And as the communists of Britain, we stand absolutely vehemently opposed to identity politics, which we class as a decadent kind of symptom of late stage capitalism. But we are not leftists. Sure thing, yeah. Traditional leftism, I absolutely understand, comes back from the French Revolution, and yeah, we support that. That definition of leftism. And I think historically, from the point of the left-right kind of binary, political binary, which I think in itself is quite undialectical thinking, to be honest with you. But yeah, from that definition, if we're to follow that definition, then sure, yeah, we are a left-wing organization. But that's a very, like I said earlier, that's a very vague term, and I think ultimately we are communist. We call ourselves the communists. We're known in Britain by the community as the communists. People don't associate us with being a left-wing organization. We are the communists of Britain. But sure, yeah, if we are to follow the traditional definition of left-wing kind of socio-economic policies, then sure, yeah, we have left-wing kind of economics and politics. But I think that's an outdated term, to be honest with you. We need a new definitions for the new left, and we are communists, and that's enough for me, to be honest.
Let's see, Comrade Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that each country has its own conditions and needs its own strategy and maybe in some cases even its own theory. And I think we don't have like one solution on how to approach people. And maybe that's the better way to do it in the UK. But I think here in Switzerland, it's better if we call ourselves traditional left. And what I do disagree with was at the beginning how you said the degenerates. I think degenerate is something which shouldn't be used by left-wingers at all, be it now lifestyle leftists or traditional left, because it's, how do I say, like, that is associated with neo-Nazis, more or less. But I'm not saying that the Communist Party Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, is saying that, of course.
Yeah, he was responding to what my mockery, an overstatement, not anything William said. So I said I didn't want to go more than 2 hours. We're gonna have to leave off our second remark, our second part of the workshop. I think there's another issue with rejecting the term leftists. Is if you go out and you talk to workers and you say, I am a communist. Communist is associated with the left. Historically, they're already going to paint that image of you. They're already going to put you in that group. I think if we're going to look about this, I think it's more important to distinguish ourselves through our actions in our policies than it is to claim to be of a perspective. And what I mean by that, if you look at Comrade Jason, he's going out in the community, he's trying to address people respectfully, he's raising demands and political issues. And I think the semantic battle of whether we call ourselves leftists isn't going to get it. I think it really is the mass populist popular economic demands that are going to be the key that's going to reach out to the people. Let's see. Any response, William? Let's do a round of concluding statements and we'll call it a night. We'll start with Comrade William.
Yeah, no, I've thoroughly enjoyed our talk today. It's been productive and interesting. Like I said prior, I was very inspired by the work that Jason's doing in Switzerland.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm always interested in meeting other European comrades. There's not enough of us out there, so we need to really stick together. So yeah, complete solidarity with you. And yeah, I just think, ultimately, we are friends of the working class. Our main duty in society is to alleviate conditions for the working class and to create a new society for them. For us that benefit us, a society that we're in control. And by doing that, we need to be a communist. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it communist. You can call it leftist. You can call it whatever you want. But really, it's human. It's human instinct to want to support each other. We're social beings naturally. So yeah, I might call myself a communist. That works for Britain. Nowadays, when you speak to British workers, when you mention leftism to them, they kind of associate with that with very decadent kind of views, that your typical kind of stereotypical like white middle class university student. That's what British workers associate with leftism now. I said degenerate, Jason. I apologize for using that word. Maybe I shouldn't have used that word, and I apologize for using degenerate. I understand. I just would say that I don't think words and phrases are owned by political ideas. I think that anyone is allowed to say whatever they want. I don't think I offended anyone by saying that word, but if I did, then I apologize. But other than that, no. Yeah, we are communists, and that's all I really have to say about that. Be a communist. If you call yourself a communist, be a communist. Do the theory, do the practice. Be a genuine socialist and champion for the working class interests. Don't pander to identity politics. Be a friend of the working class, because those two things are separate.
Thank you, young comrade. Let's see. Let's go on to Brother Fox. Any concluding statements?
Well, this has been a fantastic discussion tonight, and thank you, Jason, once again. It's some interesting insight into Switzerland. Look, and I do apologise, I don't know much about Switzerland, so it's some interesting foresights in there as well. And it's been a great discussion tonight. I love the live one about identifying was it part of the communist part of the left and all that. And I think it's a good discussion. We have a little bit of different views on things, but that's great. And I love having a discussion like this in a mature and presentable fashion, unlike having an online drama like we do see on other social media platforms and stuff. And look, my advice on everyone that watches these shows: avoid those online dramas. If you've got a little bit of a difference with someone, deal with it offline, either through a Facebook Messenger call or on the phone direct, or organise an offline Zoom meeting or something like that. And usually, because words can be interpreted millions of ways, or someone says something and it can be blown out of all proportion. And we've got to be a little bit careful about that. And also, be very careful too, because the powers that be are watching us all the time on social media. You've got spooks there, the whole lot, and something can be used against you in the future, be it in employment or something else you're trying to move forward with. So just always be careful or be wary about that. Keep it off. If there's a difference, there's a difference. And sometimes it's been good. Well, I've had comrades I've disagreed with and still comrades of mine. On certain items, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. The advantage is to that is at least we know where we stand with it, because if someone comes along and said, oh, such and such said that, well, hang on, I know him personally. He's a comrade of mine. I'll ask him myself and find to clarify it. That way is to keep people honest.
Yeah.
So it's good, and it's great. I love having these things, and I think the argument really comes down to about also too, and it's about strategy and tactics. And I think that's. I was just only thinking in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. I think that's what it comes down to. I think we're all on the same song page, and society changing and what we're trying to do, but it all comes down to that, and it's a good discussion to have. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, William, you said you'd like to be in contact with more people from Europe. There's an organization they used to be called Progressive, what was it? Party Progressive Patriots, but now they changed it to more of a think tank, and it's called Platform for Progressive Patriots. I can send the link if you just give me a second.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Here we are. Yeah. I'll post it in the. Oh no, I can't post. I have to post it in the private chat, it seems.
That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
They are our sister, well, no longer sister party, but sister think tank, I guess. And I'd like to establish relations with Australia. Do you have a party there? Are you from a party, David?
Oh, I'm not a member of a party at the moment, but I'll put it something common in the private chat. I can send you my personal email address, and then because I'm involved what we call Australians for a New Democracy. The Centre of Political Innovation in the US inspired some of us to get together and form that. We've got our public meeting next Saturday at 2:00 in Melbourne, and yeah, it's a little bit different though. It's but what I'll do, I'll send that into my private email in the chat as well. So if you want to contact me, yep.
Let's see. Let's get maybe a last word from our guest for a little bit over. Comrade Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Any final remarks that you'd like to leave the audience with tonight?
1 second. Yes, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I wanted to talk for a very long time, a second time, with a member from the CPI. And we as a party, we try to invite Keaton Mansfield and Caleb Maupin to our events. We even streamed it, but they never really had time to. And I guess we kind of never really had a chance to connect. I really enjoyed talking with you all. It was very interesting, but also tiring because it is 3 a.m. here now. I also wanted to ask you, will you upload the whole recording?
Yes, this will be on YouTube, David's Facebook, and Twitter.
Oh, okay. That's great. Because I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure we will probably cut out some parts, maybe make a TikTok video or something where we have good points. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. If you feel free, Jason, to make any cuts of this and re-upload it anywhere. And that's a general statement to our entire audience. We highly recommend people. I work 60 hours a week. I barely have any video editing capacity. I know people are more likely to watch shorter videos. So if you find anything interesting in this, please make a cut and upload it on your channel. So that's going to do it for tonight. Please like this. Please share this out. Please leave a comment. Leave a comment in the comment section on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll try to get back to you as well. Reach out to me at workingclassrevolt@gmail.com to further get into contact with us. So we're going to end with our chant. If everybody could raise their fist, repeat after me. This ain't bad. It's an old Panther saying. Here we go. Dare to struggle,
Dare to
Here's the
struggle.
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 dare to win.
Dare to
Dare
win.
Yeah.
to win.
All power to the people.
All
All
powers to
power.
the people.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.